Desde abajo se defiende a todo mundo. Radio Jornalera, donde tu voz encuentra un eco amplificado, donde tus derechos salen a la luz y disipan el miedo, donde tus aportes a la sociedad se evidencian, donde se reconoce que tus luchas reivindican derechos para todas y todos. Radio Jornalera destaca a la gente humilde que pelea por sus derechos a pesar de sus circunstancias de despojo y marginación. Eleva a los individuos y sus luchas y muestra cómo la clase trabajadora y humilde puede ser agente de cambio cuando se organiza, cuando se defiende y cuando tiene una lectura correcta de su propia realidad. Radio Jornalera provee el espacio para aprender de los invitados e invitadas sobre sus vidas, lo que les motiva a seguir adelante, sus virtudes y desafíos y hasta su música y poesía favorita. Radio Jornalera recalca el trabajo de activistas, organizadores, educadores y algunas celebridades, sus causas, sus campañas, sus estrategias, sus tácticas y los reveses más duros en el perenne quehacer de formar líderes para hacer el mundo más justo, más humano, más inclusivo. Para cambiar el mundo, primero hay que conocer a las personas que sobreviven las injusticias y políticas públicas groseras. Hay que apoyar y solidarizarse con sus luchas, porque desde abajo se defiende a todo mundo. Radio Jornalera, donde los anhelos y el sentir del pueblo trabajador cobran vida.
Muy buenas noches, gracias por reunirse con nosotros una vez más. No hemos venido aquí por mucho tiempo, pero estamos muy agradecidas por dejarnos reunirnos con ustedes hoy. Mi nombre es María y estamos en el programa Sin Salud, No hay Justicia, No Health, No Justice. Y les quiero introducir al co-host más lindo del mundo, Tabatha Paulet.
Hola, buenas, gracias por venir aquí a nuestro podcast. Estamos muy orgullosos de estar aquí representando nuestra comunidad y hoy día vamos a explicarle un poquito de nuestro camino aquí y lo que estaba pasando durante este año.
Como ustedes saben, hace mucho tiempo, desafortunadamente, no nos hemos podido reunir. Nosotros somos estudiantes de medicina, estamos en nuestro cuarto año y vamos a comenzar un poco explicando brevemente más o menos qué es la escuela cómo es la escuela de medicina y qué es lo que requiere. Entonces, bueno, la escuela de medicina son 4 años. Los 2 primeros años son teoría, prácticamente aprendiendo fisiología y las enfermedades. Y después los 2 otros años estamos en el hospital. El cuarto año tenemos que aplicar para residencia y es cuando tenemos que especializarnos.
Exactamente, recién nosotros, bueno, durante el verano teníamos que tomar un examen que se llama Step 2, vamos a hablar español en inglés, pero para nuestros estudiantes que hablan inglés y quieren conocer un poquito sobre el proceso, we had to take Step 2 in the summer, and after that, we had to apply to residency recently, so we just admitted our applications end of September. And, third year was all about kind of, figuring out like what you wanted to do, what specialties we were interested in. And we were able to like rotate through the mandatory courses that we all have to rotate through. And our elective time was used to kind of do, explore different specialties. And I applied anesthesia this past cycle.
Right. So, right, like Tabitha said, for third year, we were able to see things like surgery, internal medicine, like what would be your general doctor, or we saw other things like emergency medicine. Well, that was a little bit later, but those are all the different specialties that we have to rotate through. And that's kind of, unless you came into medical school knowing exactly what you wanted to do, that gives you an idea of what you'd like to do. I ended up dual applying, so I applied to 2 different specialties, and then I'm going to see which one works. So I did surgery and anesthesia. And so right now in the process is we apply and then we wait for people for the programs to give you interviews, and then we interview through the programs, and then we have to do something like a rank list. Eventually we find who we match to based on who we rank and who the programs rank. It's a very complicated process. Sometimes we don't even understand it, so it's going to be a little bit hard to explain exact details of it. But essentially, yes. So that's where we are right now in our application process to decide our specialty.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like a lot of people, they go into medicine, like medical school, thinking that they want to do one thing, and then eventually, you go through your rotations and you realize like that's not what you really want to do. So I wanted to ask Maria if like she came into medical school thinking one thing and now, doing something completely different.
Oh my God, yes, for sure. When I first came to medical school, I was like, "I'm never doing surgery." That's the one thing I would never, ever look into because that is like no, it's terrible. That sounds scary. And honestly, again, and that's what we're gonna talk about, but I was like, "I'm not smart enough. That would how can I ever be a surgeon? That would never be me. No, like, I'm never gonna look into that direction. That is no, I'm never doing that." And honestly, if it was up to me, I would have avoided those rotations, but those are mandatory. So once I did my surgery rotation, I fell in love with the operation room and the procedures and everything we did there, and I loved it so much, honestly, and I was like, "Oh my god, can I even start thinking is this a possibility? Can" but deep inside me, I was like, "No, no, 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 there's no way I can do that, there's no way," and so I was conflicted for so long because I wasn't sure I can do something that I thought only really smart people could do that, and really anyone else but me could do it, and so yeah, I never thought I would even think of surgery, but surgery was definitely on my radar. And then laughter, because I wasn't convinced that I had the capability to follow that, I was like, "Oh my god, let me look at something else." And then I rotated through anesthesia, and anesthesia was really fun too. But obviously those are different reasons why I liked anesthesia. It was more because I was like, "Oh my god, this is really good." I liked the operation room. I liked what they do. And so I couldn't make up my mind very last minute. I ended up applying for both. But how about you? Did you always think anesthesia?
No, so when I first started medical school, I wanted to be an OB-GYN or an emergency medicine doctor. And, I always talked about how like passionate I was about like, doing all this work and through like OB-GYN. But then I realized that as an anesthesiologist, I can also do fellowship in OB, and I get to do very similar I get to fill my cup that way as well because there's a lot of work that needs to be done through OB anesthesia with like maternal mortality rates, especially in minority women. So as an anesthesiologist, I can do that kind of work. I can help improve like health disparities. And we're very blessed that we speak a second language, and, knowing Spanish, it's been such a blessing, especially during our rotations and like working with the newer patient population, the way that they get so excited whenever they see someone that speaks Spanish. Like, I'm sure you've experienced it so many times. They're like, "Oh, mi doctorita," like, they get so excited. And I always think about my family because, we always say how like a lot of times our family members, they don't have the like opportunity to come here and like seek medical care, or they're scared. So just seeing somebody that looks like them, it like gives them that like that confianza to like share information, and we're able to give them like good treatment. But I so long story short, I ended up choosing anesthesia during my elective because anesthesia is not like obviously a mandatory rotation, and I ended up doing it and I really, really liked it.
Yeah, medicine has been one of those things where I'm so thankful to be able to, see these patients, especially in Newark, where we see patients, a lot of Hispanic patients, a lot of Ecuadorian patients, and I'm from
Mhm.
Ecuador, and it feels so homey to be able to help those patients, to be able to talk to those patients in the language that they speak. And sometimes, obviously, they feel a lot of these patients, and I know this because that's how my family felt at some point. That's how I personally felt at some point. So sometimes as patients, we feel they don't understand, or we feel neglected, and we're scared of what they're doing. Sometimes if my family sometimes says, "Oh my god, I'm gonna be like the guinea pig of what they're doing." So it's such a mistrust of the healthcare system. And then to see someone that looks like them, of their race, that who speaks Spanish, I know they feel so much more comfortable. They're able to share more things. They're able to be more honest about what they're truly feeling, about their symptoms, about the medications they're taking, who they're borrowing medications from. That's very common in our
Yeah,
culture. We always borrow medications from our
yeah.
family, or we buy it from the corner store. And as much as we say it, like as now doctors, we say maybe like that's not a good thing, right? But we understand that that's normal, and we are not judging patients for doing so because I did it at some point in my household.
Yeah.
And so having, as think for them as patients, having someone who experienced that has to feel so relieving, and it has to give them that ability to really share their story with us, and it helps us to help them diagnose them, help them find the treatment, and really close the gaps that we're trying to close so much in all the health disparities that we live every day here in Newark.
Yeah, exactly. Like I immediately thought about the antibiotics and like how our community they think like as soon as they start feeling better, they don't have to finish their antibiotics. And that's something that, discussion that we always have to have with our patients, with like our families, that no, like you're supposed to take it. And then you have to explain to them, like antibiotic resistance and everything. But it truly is like a blessing and an honor to be in this position, to be able to help our family, our friends, and our communities, because we are like representing them.
It's really, I'm really, really thankful to be able to be here, especially knowing that at some point the odds were not in our favor, right? I came from Newark, coming from a place where the resources are very limited. I was undocumented. Schools didn't even want to accept my application. Um, Having so many years to wait, I couldn't apply for financial aid. My parents could never pay for a whole medical school tuition or undergraduate tuition. I mean, it's just been so many things constantly bringing us down, and to be able to be here now and to be able to help other patients with our experiences, and also help other people in our shoes to follow our same footsteps, it's truly a blessing. And I'm so grateful for all the opportunities that been able to get as we are fighting for this, but also obviously for our parents. Siempre agradecida con nuestros papás porque siempre están con nosotros, nos han dado tanto apoyo, y yo sé que yo no pudiera estar en este lugar sin el apoyo, el cariño, todo lo que ellos han hecho por nosotros.
Sí, igualmente todos los sacrificios que hicieron para que estemos aquí hoy día trabajando tanto para poder darnos un techo, comida, like todo, y podernos enfocarnos en nuestros estudios. No estaría aquí sin toda su ayuda y todo lo que hicieron para nosotros. So, estamos muy agradecidas por todo su trabajo que han hecho. But I was also thinking about how, like, I grew up in Patterson. I still live in Patterson. And again, having the odds against us, like people like doubting us because of where we come from, because we're first generation, because of who we are. And I think it's very important for us to, like, tell our stories, because that way we're able to like show other people that it can be done. And I remember even like when we were studying for step one, like me and Maria, we've been friends for like all years of med school. And like when we were studying for step one, I remember that was like such a hard time, because we always doubted ourselves. Like it was always like, oh my God, like I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. And I remember I would have my little like meltdowns, and I'm like, I can't. And then we'd have to like encourage each other. Like, no, like, there are people that are like, that are coming after us. And these people, like, we are like truly, like no matter what adversity we have faced, it definitely has made us who we are today. And, all those obstacles, everything we are overcoming, like, it like made us, it got us to this point. And I think we always have to remember that, we're smart, we belong here. And we're always like, I know that's always a thing where we're kind of like struggling, like, oh my God, like, am I meant to be here? Am I smart enough? But that all comes from like, again, our upbringings and like constantly being told that we're not good enough.
Yeah, honestly, and this is bringing back to that memory because I just remember we've been through so much, and obviously, and a lot of people that are in the periphery, they're like, "Oh, you guys make it look so easy, right? Because we're here now and we survived." But it's sometimes it gets really tough in medical school. It's just so much work. It's so draining, and it's just so many responsibilities, and it's just really scary. And to add on top of that, the stress of feeling like, "Am I capable enough? Am I going to fail this one exam?" So in medical school, you have to pass 3 board exams: step 1, step 2, and step 3. And step 1, we do it between our second year and our third year. Obviously, if you don't pass, if you fail, you can retake it once, but it just looks really bad. It's going to be hard to apply to residency. Obviously, you don't want to fail a board exam, right, in medical school. And so when we were studying for step 1 together, it was just so scary. I honestly thought I wasn't going to pass, and in my head, I'm like, there's no way I can pass this exam. I mean, I've struggled so much all my life with everything. How am I going to be as smart as all the other white kids? I'm serious. That's what I was thinking, as all the other like people who's got all these resources, who's got parents who are their doctors. Like my parents didn't even go to college. Like, how can I be able to pass this exam easily? There's no way. And I struggled, and there were times where we would cry so much while we were studying. I remember doing questions like crying in tears, crying, and it's you don't have enough time to cry, really. You have just a few weeks to do it, and you have to keep going. And so I remember one time we were like studying so much, and Tabatha just was like, I need to take a walk. We would take random walks because we would be studying for 14, 15, 16 hours
Yeah.
every single day for like 6 weeks nonstop. And if you took a break, you would feel really guilty. Like it was the worst guilt inside. Oh my God, how can I take a break if I don't even have the capacity to do anything else?
Yeah.
And I remember Tabatha would be like crying and crying, and we would hold each other and it's like, yes, we're smart enough. Yes, we can do it. Remember where you came from. Come on, you got this. Like you're so smart. Literally talking to each other, giving each other pep talks. And I would be crying inside, but the minute I remember seeing Tabatha cry, I'm like, no, one of us has to be strong. One of us has to be like, has to have more strength than just telling each other how much we can do it, just pushing each other. I'm so thankful to have had someone in my life, like a friend that was there in these very difficult times, because only if you live this you can understand how stressful this is, and to have someone who understands where you're coming from, understands what you're living through, and the stress of everything else, and then someone to push you has been very nice, and I'm so thankful that I was able to do that with you.
Oh my God, no, same here. Like I'm so, so grateful for you. And I always tell you like all the time, like I don't know. It would be difficult for me to have gone through step one, step two, like literally all these exams without like your support. And I think it's so important, like when you're in medical school, like you have to find your people. You have to find people that, you can relate to, you can be vulnerable with, because like medical school is not easy. And like, you truly need to um somehow like find strength, but like even opening up to people and like seeing that we all feel the same way, it's really comforting knowing that you're not alone.
Right, because also there's like this narrative about medical students, oh, they're so smart, they must know so much, they don't struggle through anything, right? And so that it gives us fear to share how we truly feel and how scared we truly are, and how sometimes we're like at the tip of failing because
Yeah.
these things are so much and it's so hard, and we don't sometimes, if you don't feel comfortable enough or confident to talk to someone about that, then you'll never truly be able to get those things out of your chest, or really de-stress yourself, and or find someone to talk to you, to lift you up, because you're not going to be vulnerable enough to show them how you truly feel. And so this brings us back to all these terrible feelings of, oh my God, we can't do this, we won't be able to do this. And it's all about that imposter syndrome that we wanted to talk about. Do you want to talk about a little bit what that means, or what how people perceive that?
Yeah, so like imposter syndrome, I feel like unfortunately it's very prevalent in minority communities because a lot of us, we're not represented in like healthcare and law, like in many fields. So I know for me personally, like, when I first wanted to pursue medicine, it was like very scary because I didn't see many people that looked like me, and there was not that representation. So how can you see yourself in another person's like shoes or becoming a doctor if you don't see that anywhere? But with imposter syndrome, you're constantly thinking to yourself like you don't belong, and you know, um, like that's not a good, like you're not at a safe space kind of thing. So I feel like it never truly goes away. But throughout the years, I know for me, like you're able to kind of grow confidence within yourself, and you start like believing that you actually do belong.
Yeah, so I was heard of this imposter syndrome, and like, are you, when I was feeling incompetent, people would be like, "Are you having imposter syndrome?" I'm like, "Oh, that sounds like what I'm feeling. I don't even know what that means." And so when I was looking up, but what does this actually mean? And so they described it as an overwhelming fear of being perceived as incompetent. So you internalize that you yourself are not good enough. You don't know what you're doing, and you attribute your success sometimes luck, or
Mhm.
sometimes someone liked me enough to let me do well, or anything other than your own abilities, right? You start thinking that whatever you did well is not because you were smart enough, it's because that day you woke up on the right side of the bed, like all these things. And then you're thinking, you don't see, like you said, we don't see a lot of doctors that look like us. We don't often talk to people who can relate to us in this field, and so imposter syndrome start to take over us and overwhelm us. And I feel like I lived that through, like, and I think all of us, right? Like it's very common in minority groups, where we often feel this, and we often feel we're not capable. And the sad part, I think, of it all is it doesn't just cause so much mental distress, depression, anxiety, but it also it also hinders us so much to the point where we're not performing to our optimal best because we're so worried about it. We're so worried about not being good enough. And sometimes we don't even try because we think that we're not going to be good enough at all. And I feel like that kind of is what I took a long gap year, like almost 5 years medical school, between undergraduate and medical school. So in here, you have to do 4 years of undergrad and 4 years of medical school. And some people go straight back to back. And I took so long. And partly because, yes, I was undocumented, I couldn't apply, but I was so afraid to even apply. And I took the MCAT so many times and I did well. And I was so afraid to apply with my scores because I was like, there's no way they're going to take me. There's no way they're going to take someone like me. There's no way they're going to give me a shot. And even when I was in medical school, I remember seeing so many kids, and I would be like, oh my God, let me ask what they're doing, how they're studying, because they have to know so much. I mean, I'm struggling, but they probably don't struggle. There's no way. And then I would ask them what they're doing to study, and they weren't even at the lessons that I was. They were behind me, and I'm like, what the heck? How are they behind me? But it just, all these different experiences made me realize that yes, we are good enough, but it's just we've been through so many experiences that debilitate our confidence so much. And I'm working through that so much as I'm going through, because it's a constant reminder. People always say like, oh, you're so insecure. But it's not just because I want to be insecure. Obviously, I want to feel better, but it's just all these different experiences have put me down. And I want to always bring this message to everybody. You have to think to yourself, yes, you can do it. Yes, you're smart enough. Yes, you have to try your best, because all of that's going to pay off. And all your success, always remember that is going to be because you had the ability, not because someone gave you a free pass, not because you were Hispanic, because I know a lot of people like to talk about that. Oh, they give the Hispanics an easier pass. No, that's not true. It's no, don't let anyone make you feel like you are in a place because of someone else.
Yeah, that was beautifully well said because, like you mentioned, a lot of times people want to say, oh, because you're Hispanic, because you're this, that's why you're here. You're like a token. But that's not true. We got here because of our own merits. We had to study for the MCAT just like everybody had to study for it. We had to gain clinical experiences and have a competitive medical school application. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. But it's very easy to kind of forget all of that when you're in medical school because you are literally surrounded by the smartest people in the country. So you're kind of, in college, it's very easy to, I guess, be at the top of your class to get all A's because, it's college. But then once you get to medical school, you're literally with people who had A's all their lives. So you're not the top anymore. So then you start comparing yourself and you start thinking, well, my parents aren't doctors. My parents, didn't give me these resources that a lot of my classmates had. And my imposter syndrome, I feel would come off it would be the worst every time I had to study for a board exam. So step 1, step 2, even the MCAT. And I was analyzing why is it always a standardized exam? Because whenever I would take my medical school exams, I would feel a little scared, but not to the same debilitating anxiety that I would feel every time I studied for a board exam. And for me personally, when I was in Patterson, going to middle school, they always put so much pressure on us for these standardized exams because, a lot of us, the school district was, they were not performing well. A lot of students were failing. So they kind of were all right, what's the point? Everyone's going to fail. So I think I always carried that with me. So for step 1 or even step 2, which I took most recently in the summer, whenever I would get a good score, I'd be oh, I just kind of how Maria mentioned, oh, it was out of luck. I got the topics that I was very strong in or whatever. And that's why I did good. I never, ever credit it because of my studying, my hard work, all the hours that I put. And I'm very grateful that I had an advisor at school that kind of helped me cope through this and get through this. And, she would always remind me no, you got that score because you deserved it. But for me, I'd be oh no, whatever. And I think those thoughts of always thinking that I didn't deserve that score would always affect me because the practice exam that I would take right after, I would bomb it. And I'd be oh my God, I'm not ready. I'm not smart. So it was always an unhealthy cycle of thinking I'm not good enough, thinking I didn't deserve that score. And even when it was time for me to take my real exam, I remember I was so scared. I was oh my God, I don't think I can do this. I'm not smart. But I just went right in because I was okay, I have no other choice at this point. I had to start my next rotation. So I had to take my exam whether I like it or not. But the previous exam that I took, I did decently well. I didn't have the score that I didn't, for that practice exam, I didn't have the score that I wanted, but I was like, I think I'm just gonna do it because I feel ready. Like, I think it's just my mind playing tricks on me. And I had like done everything that I could at that point. Like, there was not more that I can do. So I took my exam, and when I got my score back, I was like shocked. I was like, oh my God, like I did so much better than I thought I would. But again, like I just wish I could like hug like the older me and be like, it's gonna be okay. Like, you're smart. Like, of course you're gonna like, you put in all this work. So there's no other like chance that you're not gonna do well. But it's very hard when you're in the moment and like your mind's playing so many games with you.
Yeah, I think though that concept of imposter syndrome is hurtful, right? And it's constantly replaying in different phases of our lives, and especially when you're doing something like in medicine or in these professional careers where you don't often see people like you, right? Like in medicine, we have, I think it was about, I don't want to say the incorrect numbers, but
6%.
6% of the entire doctors are Hispanic. We're such a small, and then on top of that, even a smaller number are women. And so we're in a male-dominated, non-Hispanic dominated world.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall into this trap of believing that you are not going to be as good as them because there's no people like you didn't make it. There's no what makes you different. You can't imagine that you could be as good as everyone else because you're just the minority all the time, right? Like, and often we were just talking about this in the beginning when we're like, even now people often confuse us for nurses, and it's fine. I respect nurses. I love them. We work very closely to them and we need them in the healthcare. But it's so hard for people to believe we're nurses, right? And it's like, in that those little things feed into my insecurity sometimes, right? Like when we're starting here, they're like, oh, good, like it's so nice to see two nurses, but we're not nurses, we're doctors, But if people automatically assume that because we are women, we're going to be nurses, right? And I remember this constantly in the emergency room so many times. When I saw patients, right, I would interview them and I would ask them, and they would be like, "Oh my God, so nice that we had a great rapport. We had a great rapport. We got along so well." And then when the doctor came with me to see the patients, and they would be like, "Oh, our medical student here," and they're like, "You're gonna be a doctor? Oh my God, good for you! Wow!" Like so impressed that I am gonna be a doctor. Like they couldn't believe I was gonna be their doctor.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me feel like, why can I be the doctor? Like, why makes me so different? Why don't they believe that I could be their doctor? It kind of, and then, and it wasn't once, it was constant, right? And it made me feel like, what am I doing to make them feel that I'm not capable of being their doctor, And so learning to quiet down those experiences and maybe learn from them is a good tool to say, okay, it's nothing that you're doing wrong. It's just that that's how society is put us now, thinking that women can be mostly nurses. And there's nothing wrong with that, but is learning, okay, it's not that I'm doing anything wrong. I'm doing everything I can. I'm going to continue to do everything I can and do my best with patients, but just not letting those little ideas fall into my head and make me feel like, oh, I'm not good enough. Because there are many times where like constantly thinking, even now, I've talked to patients so many times and I've told them I'm the medical student here, I'm going to be taking care of you today. And at the end, I'm like, oh my God, you're so nice. What made you want to be a nurse? And I'm like, no, I'm going to be the medical student. Okay, that's so nice, blah, blah, blah. And how come you're going to be a nurse? I literally said I was gonna be the medical student, like, so many times, but it's just this is breaking those ideas is a little bit hard, but I think we just have to be really strong about it because we have other women coming before us, and we have to show other women that they can also do, and they can also be doctors as Hispanic women.
Yeah, that's so true. Like the amount of times I was also like, people, I would introduce myself and they would always think like I'm the nurse as well. And I noticed like some of my attendings, they'd be like, okay, this is like student Dr. Paula. And that would that would honestly make me cringe. But then when they would say that, they'd be like, oh, like she's gonna be a doctor. But like you said, it's very hard for them to like believe that, we're going to be physicians. And because again, we're not very like well represented. But I hope like I know it's gonna take a long time for us for like society to like understand and see that, Latinos can also be physicians because there's only like literally like 2% of us. Like, so we're not well represented, but hopefully with more time and like with more work and like as the new generations come, more women are like inspired, more Latina women are inspired to like pursue medicine and become physicians. Hopefully this changes.
And it's important to remember that we are not any different than any other little girl in any Newark public school, any Patterson
Mhm.
public schools. We're literally them. And they should know that they can do whatever it takes to become a doctor or a surgeon, an
Mhm.
anesthesiologist, whatever, a cardiologist, whatever they if they put the work into something that they truly want, they can really do it. Obviously, we don't do things alone in a vacuum. It's not just my work. It's always parents working with us. It's finding a mentor, finding an advisor, finding someone to help you. But you are capable of doing this. You are fully capable. You're smart enough, and I hope that through us. And like we have seen it, right? Because we've seen so many women before us be able to do it, and that kind of gave us a little bit of the courage and the strength. But I hope that more little girls who were in our shoes, who are in these like Newark public schools or like in
Mhm.
other public schools, can see that they can really do whatever they want, and they can really. And I'm not saying, wow, this is like the most important career in the world. I love being able to be a doctor, and I'm thankful for the opportunity. And I want them to know that they also can be here and can get here.
Yeah, I'll never forget our conversation when you were making me feel better because again, I was like crying, but you told me that, all the people that are like looking up to us, people like from Newark, from Patterson, like all those students, like remember when you were younger and at some point you were like, like I want to be a doctor one day. And I never saw my first like Hispanic doctor when I was young, but I would see the doctors. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. But like, what the work that you're doing now, all the studying, like all of it, it can be very exhausting emotionally, having to sacrifice so much because through this career, you do have to sacrifice a lot. It's not easy at all. And, depending what specialty you want to go into as well, like that requires different kinds of sacrifices. But really, like whenever I see like little girls, like, in Patterson, I'm like, oh my God, like that was me at some point. Like, I was that little girl who had this dream of becoming a doctor, and, like, I would have never imagined, like, in a million years that, like, I would be here today.
Right. Yeah. And I hope that we're able to maybe use this avenue and maybe other avenues and with our stories continue to disseminate this message that you can do it. All these little girls can do it because we were there before. I remember when I used to live in a building in Newark, and I had to do a summer project, and that was like the first time I was thinking like, oh, can I be a doctor? But like obviously I was in like the hood basically. I'm from the hood. And then they were like, and I was trying to do my summer homework, and it was like a big packet. And the kids were like, why are you doing that? Like, and I was like, no, like I need to do it. Like, I want to be a doctor. And again, I was little. So like this was years ago. And they were like, oh my God, like, don't even bother. Like, there's no way, because people really doubted. There's no
Mhm,
way that those little people from like this like
mhm.
building, it's going to be able to become a doctor. But I know I did it because I worked so hard, because I had so many people that helped me, but anybody in there can also do it if they really want to. And of course, it's hard. It comes with so much tribulations, and it comes with so many roadblocks, and it comes with so many people sometimes putting you down, and the system sometimes
Mhm.
not working in our favors. But if you really want to, you can, because we were able to do it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Like even I remember in middle school, like I applied to like some like magnet high school and I wanted to do like the medical field. And even my counselor at that when I was that young, she was like, oh, like you're not gonna get into this magnet school, but like you want to be a doctor, like you're not gonna be a doctor. And again, it's because a lot of people, from Patterson, unfortunately, they don't have that ability to, pursue a higher education. And it's not our fault. It's because we literally don't have the right resources, we don't have the right mentors. And for a lot of us, it's kind of just a dream. And, I'm very fortunate that I was placed exactly where I needed to be. And, I'm very grateful. Like, I'm very faithful that everything works out the way that it's supposed to. And although I am the first person, both of us were the first people in our families to become physicians. I know we're not going to be the last because, we're going to work hard to try to not convince, but like inspire other people, not our like future children, but like, people in our community to, like, pursue this career.
Right. Yeah. And we hope with our testimony and our stories, and also with our now resources that we bring with,
Mhm,
right? We hope that we can also help other people that are coming behind us and do the same thing that people did with us. Because, like I said, it's not when we didn't do this alone. There's other people that are there, somewhat, some way or another. Someone else helped us get here, and we hope that we can always also do that for everybody else coming behind us. And we hope that we can continue to have this conversation about imposter syndrome when we feel like we're not good enough, we might not be able to, we're not smart enough, we don't belong in places, or where we are in circles where we're the only Hispanic, we're the only woman. Because it's happened to me many times, and I'm sure for you too.
Oh, yeah.
There's many times where I've been in rotations, clinical rotations, where I'm the only Hispanic person. And so that can easily, and that makes me feel uneasy. Of course, I don't belong. I don't share any similar
Yeah.
experiences. I mean, I can tell them the crazy things I lived when I was younger and like the building, like the things that I can't share that with people. I have little things in common with these people. We in a medical school, we have this thing called HHH. And it's like they group people in the entire class, they divide them into like groups of like 12 students, right?
Yeah, I think so.
12 students. And so like the whole point is, I guess, of that HHH, learning maybe a little bit of clinical, how to do like physical exams.
Yeah.
But we talk about it, we kind of bond with each other a little bit in the first 2 years because we see each other consistently, and we talk about experiences and so on and so forth. But in my group, I wasn't the only Hispanic. Actually, that was the first time. There were 2 Hispanic. Me and Nicole were the. But several people. There were 12 of us, and I think 8 of us were 8 of them were kids from doctors. So it was only me, Nicole, and Mythily. So 3 other people who weren't kids to doctors, and 2 of us were Hispanic. And so they talked about their life experiences there, and and I never could relate, right? Like I remember one kid was like, "Yeah, I don't understand why people don't have health insurance," and they would come.
Oh my God.
And that struck me because I didn't have health insurance. I like
Yeah.
that's normal to me. My parents don't have health. Like
Mhm.
to me, that is normal. Like, and I understand why people don't have health insurance. I understand why kids would come with at the end of their illness or diseases,
Mhm.
because that's how I grew up. But to them, it's so weird. It's so different, right? So we're always in these circles where we feel like we don't belong, where they eat different things, where they do different things.
Mhm.
And I think remembering that, yes, we are different. Yes, we bring a lot of culture with us, and embracing that, teaching people our food, our songs, our language.
Mhm.
It's learning to be more. And I think this took me a while to understand, to learn to be more proud of who I am, of my culture, of the beautiful things that we bring to the table, and not to feel so more so that we're so different. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed because and there are embarrassing things, I'm not gonna lie. And there are like some embarrassing things that we grew up with and we did that I think a lot of normal other people in other places and other circles probably didn't do. And then we'll talk about it next time, so tune in. But essentially the point is, learning to really appreciate and love each other and love our culture, and understanding that we're not different in that sense, that we're not weird, and that we do belong and where we are, that we work so hard where we are, and don't let these terrible inside voices in our heads tell us, you don't belong here, you're not like everyone else, you're not smart enough. No, we have to tell each other and tell ourselves, yes, we are smart enough. Yes, you are great. Yes, you work hard, and you will work hard. You will continue to work hard, and it will pay off because you're doing the right thing.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like as immigrants, we always have like that strong work ethic just instilled in us. And even though there were a lot of times where I felt like I was in like intelligent, or I didn't know a subject or whatever content, I would always like tell myself, all right, like right now, like I might not know this, but I know that at least I have like the perseverance to like and dedication to like sit here and like learn what I need to learn. And I was able to like get through it. So always telling yourself like you might not know everything 100% now, but you will know it eventually if you sit down and you really persevere through it. And again, just surrounding yourself with like people that are very, if you can, because I know not a lot of students have that capability to be in spaces where there are other students that look like them. We're very blessed that at our medical school, there's a good amount of Hispanics. So it's very easy for us to kind of be ourselves, share our culture, our music, everything, because I don't think I've ever felt like I couldn't be who I am. And if you know me, I'm like very proud, like Latina, like I love to like play my music. I love to speak Spanish. And that's just who I am, because my parents, like they always taught me, and my family, they always taught me to be very proud of who I am, where I come from. And although I didn't grow up in Peru, I learned a lot about my culture, living in Patterson. So again, like don't try not to hide who you are, and that part of you makes you different and makes you unique. And you never know, like another person who's looking at you and sees that, you're embracing that part of your culture, it'll inspire them to do the same.
Yeah. So I think just to close this, I think I just wanted to say don't let your inner critic tell you that you can't do it. Don't let your surroundings, when you're the only person, tell you that you don't belong. Don't let how different you are make you feel like the weird one. Um, and know that you're capable of whatever you want to do if you're willing to put all the hard work. And most importantly, do not be afraid to ask for help. I know I've struggled with this my whole life. Please, if you I know we're coming with backgrounds where we don't have people who know the path and who haven't been in places that we want to be. But don't be afraid to look for the people who are where you want to be and ask for help. And you'll get a lot of no's. You probably will get a lot of people to ignore you. But if you keep asking, someone will help you. Someone will reply. So don't be afraid, because that's literally how a lot of us got here. And I'm so thankful that sometimes I've lost that fear, and ask a little help has come a long way. And I'm continuing to work with this because I'm really afraid to do that. But I think that if you need anything, you can ask for help. You should definitely do it. And please forget about the imposter syndrome is a terrible thing. But if you please, if you need someone to talk to or encourage you, always find someone in your friend group. Talk to your parents. Talk to someone to encourage and to remind you how great you are. Because I'm confident all of us have something amazing to give.
Yes, exactly. And the last thing that I want to say is, our target audience, it's like mostly like Latino, like med students or, pre-med students. But an organization I always advocate for is the Latino Medical Student Association. Through that organization, which is LMSA, I was able to meet a lot of my mentors. And, people are so willing to help you out. So don't be afraid to ask for help, especially, if they come from a similar background as you. I know I get super excited to help out whoever needs help, because again, we need to try to increase the number of Latino physicians here in this country. So try to help, quiet down that voice that's sometimes criticizing you and telling you you're not good enough, because you are good enough and you do belong.
Sí, sí, ok. Sí, ok. So, vamos a ver algunos comentarios que vimos en el internet y vamos a compartirlos ahora. Ah, sí, ¿nos puede leer, por favor?
Javier Manos dice: qué espectáculo tan impresionante. La información presentada es realmente excelente y de gran calidad. Eso dice Javier Ma para ustedes.
Oh, muchas gracias por el apoyo y por favor sigan escuchando, no dejen de escuchar.
También tenemos a Marilyn Riera, que dice: es un verdadero ejemplo de superación a pesar de las circunstancias. Me agrada ver que no existe ningún obstáculo que les permita cumplir sus sueños y sus metas. Congratulations, girls.
Oh,
Wow, thank you so much. Muchas gracias por esos comentarios. Esperamos que en poco de esto les dé inspiración.
sí, muchas gracias.
¿Perdón? Los dos, okay. You can go.
Okay. So, si usted quiere ser una doctora, yo creo que es muy importante que sepan que sí se puede lograr. Ninguna carrera va a ser fácil, pero si te dedicas a la profesión de ser doctora y si tratas de buscar ayuda, nosotros siempre estamos disponibles para poder ayudar a las personas que si quieren ser doctoras. Am, yo creo que es una buena carrera. Estás ayudando a tu comunidad mucho, porque no hay muchos doctores aquí en los Estados Unidos que son latinos. So, su cultura, su idioma, todo lo que trae con usted puede ayudar mucho a sus pacientes.
Sí, y mi mensaje es el mismo, de verdad. Sí se puede, y sí se puede sí puedes ser la doctora que tú quieres de tus sueños, si trabajas lo más fuerte que puedes, si buscas toda la ayuda que necesitas. No hay obstáculo que te va a vencer. Van a haber muchas piedras en el camino, pero todo se va a poder si tú tienes la fuerza y las ganas de trabajar lo más fuerte que tú puedas. Ok. Muchas gracias por encontrarnos esta noche. Yo sé que todo el mundo está muy ocupado. Esperamos tener más programas así y conversar de más cosas, conversar de nuestra familia, de nuestra cultura. Vamos a darle el flyer más pronto y vamos a hablar de otros tópicos y esperamos que se vuelvan a reunir con nosotros muy pronto. Gracias.
Audio Jungle.